Hello and welcome to today's video. This time we're taking a look at The Weird Tales Boys by Stephen Jones, celebrating 100 years of the Weird Tales pulp magazine, as well as 3 classic authors. So sit back, relax, and let's take a look. Okay then, so first of all, let's have a little look at the book itself. So it's got this really nice cover by Les Edwards. Now he's done quite a few of these sorts of jackets there. It's actually like a full wraparound there. And as I said in the intro here, it's a celebration of 100 years of Weird Tales pulp magazine, which amazingly started in 1923. And but also 3 prominent authors who sort of got their break really in the Weird Tales magazine. So you've got H.P. Lovecraft, Robert E. Howard, and Clark Ashton Smith. So that's the 3 authors' careers that we have a look at, and their story is sort of intertwined with the Weird Tales story as well. Now it's published by PS Publishing, and they do some really fantastic stuff, and it's also part of a series which Stephen's been releasing called the Masters of Horror series, and there's the list there, the first 15 anyway. So it's really great. I reviewed the Con one a few months back on the channel, which was really superb, looking at the original screenplay by Edgar Wallace. So it's format wise is out in this paperback, and there is also a limited hardback. Now as I filmed this, I did have a quick check on the PS Publishing website, and it looks as if this slipcased hardback edition has already sold out, sadly. But in the name of completeness, since I do actually have a copy, I will show you what you would have got, and you might want to keep your eyes peeled for one. So I believe the actual contents is the same, except we've got the nice end papers, it being a hardback of course, and we've got this laid in signature sheet here, which I think is really nice. It's got Stephen's signature, Les Edwards and Ramsey Campbell, who does the introduction, and then we've got like facsimile signatures of H.P. Lovecraft, Robert E. Howard, and of course Clark Ashton Smith. So very nice, that one. So that's one that you might want to have a little look for on the collector's market. But the actual contents, and we'll have a good look through the paperback one in a minute, is as far as I can see exactly the same, except for the sign sheet there. And of course it comes in this rather snazzy slipcase, so that is a very gorgeous little publication. So you might want to bear that one in mind. So this is the regular trade paperback, and once again, a bit like the Con book, it sits so well in the hand. It's just the right size for me. It's got like dust wrapper flaps, and then we've got the story. Now, as you can see, if I just flick through here, you can see it's really quite nicely illustrated throughout. So it's just the sort of thing that you want from a non-fiction book, and the illustrations themselves are really, although they're black and white, they're really high quality and nice and sharp images, particularly when you think the age of some of these. That's obviously a more 80s one. So the book sort of opens up with an introduction by a fellow Weird Tales fan, which is Ramsey Campbell. So we get his introduction first of all. Then we get sort of a history of the very earliest days of Weird Tales in the 1920s. And of course, back then, Weird Tales was printed on really sort of pulpy paper, and one of the many newsstands that were around of the day. However, it stood out with the subheading "The Unique Magazine," and it certainly was the only magazine dedicated to the weird and unusual. Here's a really early one there from March 2023, so that may even be the first one. And it says that The Unique Magazine. And then once we got through the origins of that, we're then on to the first author, which is H.P. Lovecraft. And the book sort of covers his early influences, such as Edgar Allan Poe, to his work as a revisionist or a proofreader to us, to him starting to write his own stories. And these early stories are then all detailed, really almost bibliographical style. And it's surprising to see how much or how lax rather he was with some of his copyrights to these, and sadly it seemed he didn't make much money beyond his initial payment to the Weird Tales magazine, which is a real sort of shame. But I said all of the entries everything that got printed, stuff that was rejected, all gets listed in here. Then it's the turn of Clark Ashton Smith. There he is, very young there. Author, and it's an author I really didn't know a lot about, but once again his early career is detailed, along with his path into writing. I was surprised to find that he had already had published works of poetry early in his career, and it was after reading this that H.P. Lovecraft reached out to the author, and then they started corresponding via letter. And of course, Lovecraft realised that he wasn't making much money from his poetry, so he suggested he try his hand at writing for the Weird Tales pulp. And this is indeed how Smith continued to write for the magazine and made a living for 25 years. Even using some of his illustrations, because he was an illustrator as well, making it into the magazine. So absolutely fantastic. Then we move on to Robert E. Howard, and like the other two authors, was a bit of a sickly youngster and spent many hours reading. And once again, after conversing with H.P. Lovecraft, he started getting his stories printed in the pages of Weird Tales from the July 1925 issue. Then over the next few years, of course, Howard became a major contributor to the magazine, with many of his creations including Solomon Kane and King Kull, of course, and his most famous creation, Conan the Cimmerian. Howard's subsequent stories, what a great cover that is, are then detailed, and this has prompted me to search out some of these. I've certainly enjoyed revisiting the Conan stories myself this year. They've been really great. I never read the early ones in any sort of order, and my real exposure to Conan was only ever through the Marvel comic, which is actually once again detailed the early origins of that later on in the book, when we see where the characters went in more modern times, sort of in the last sort of 50 years or so. There's Robert E. Howard there, like a brilliant photo there, isn't it? I don't know what he's dressed up as quite, but I think out of the three, he's probably the one I've read the most, then followed by Lovecraft. And as I said, didn't really know an awful lot about Clark Ashton Smith, really. Although I was happy to say I've spotted in the almost bibliography at the end, you do see some of the books, and I realise I do actually have some of these, or at least some short stories by him, which I imagine most people have by all these authors. But once they'd sort of reached out and sort of done their time in Weird Tales, and of course passed away in a lot of cases, they did then move on to being printed by Arkham House and the Gnome Press. And all of these sort of instances are detailed in the book here. Their sort of transition from the 1950s into a bit more mainstream publishing. Although they, Arkham and Gnome were both niche publishers, they were at least sort of well received in the bookshops. And then it moves into like the early 60s stuff, so mid to late 60s I should say, with L. Sprang de Camp's editing of the original Conan books, and then their publication by Lancer, which are quite famous because they're not the actual original books. They have been sort of doctored in a way, a bit of edited, but those became very, very popular. And apparently Robert E. Howard himself was second only in fantasy sales to J.R.R. Tolkien in the late 1960s, which is incredible to believe, really, isn't it? And then the concluding chapters here, they discuss the more modern day criticism, sort of the movies, the TVs, the comic books, as I said, that have been done, or the adaptations for the three authors' works. Absolutely fantastic. And see, things like these, the Avon Fantasy Reviews are quite easy to get hold of. They're not cheap, but £10 to £15 you can pick up an original one and have something really, really nice there. And it was this later one here that really sort of bridged the gap for me from them going into hardback into then the more mass market paperbacks, which I'm more familiar with. Sadly, I don't have any copies of the original Weird Tales, but what a great magazine it is. And I think you'll find, if you're not really familiar with any of these authors' works per se, you're probably aware of them. I mean, pretty much everyone has heard of H.P. Lovecraft or Robert E. Howard, but if you not really know a lot about these authors, this is a nice 60s one, then this book is like the perfect primer, really. Certainly after I finished reading it, I couldn't wait to dive back into a few more Conan classics, but also to explore a bit more H.P. Lovecraft. There are stories I've never read, and didn't write that much in all honesty, and definitely tipped my toe into the works of Clark Ashton Smith. There's really, as I go towards the end here, I don't want to spoil the whole thing for you, but right at the very end here, there's a great line from Stephen Jones here. It says, however, it is difficult to imagine any other authors from that period still having such a profound influence on horror and fantasy fiction today. Whether you love them or hate them, these Weird Tales boys continue to cast their long, talented, and in some ways tragic shadows over our genre. May it always remain so. Well, there you go. I think if you've got even a passing interest in any of the Weird Tales authors, these three authors, or the Weird Tales pulp, you're going to absolutely love this book. There's definitely plenty to enjoy here. And there you go. Thanks very much to PS Publishing for sending me this copy for review. I genuinely really enjoyed it. About a subject that I wasn't massively familiar with. So hats off to Stephen. Great job there. Very well done indeed. And to PS Publishing for publishing two absolutely superb and beautiful books. If you have enjoyed today's video, do please give it that thumbs up. Do please hit the subscribe button if you're not already for regular vintage content. And I look forward to seeing you again very soon. Bye.